The college football playoff bracket is set, and if there's one takeaway this year, it's that the expanded format didn't eliminate controversy. It just shifted it. Notre Dame, a 10-win team with a strong resume, gets left out in favor of Miami, Tulane, and JMU. And honestly, you can see the committee's logic. Miami beat Notre Dame head-to-head. Tulane and JMU earned their spots as a group of 5 champions, and Indiana shocked the world, not really, by winning the Big Ten for the first time in 80 years. So instead of crying foul, let's call it what it is, a playoff that reflects both tradition and disruption. The Blue Bloods are here, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, but so are the outsiders who forced their way in. That's the beauty and the chaos of college football. And this morning, we'll break down the bracket, the matchups to watch, and yes, what Notre Dame snub means for their future. But it isn't about just one team being left out. It's about a sport that thrives on debate and a playoff system that guarantees we will never run out of it. Thanks for joining me. I'm producer Scott, and this is my little iteration of Coach's Corner that I'm calling Off the Bench with producer Scott. We'll talk to Bennett Wise and my dad right after this. Here we are. Oh, hang on. He's muted again. Oh. There he is.
I'm always muted.
So, like I had said right there, well, Bennett, you've been on the show many times. Have you ever really formally introduced yourself, or is it just kind of like, hey, here's Bennett, he's going to talk?
I think it's been the latter.
So, who are you, and why are you here?
So I am a sports anchor for WSBT 22, the CBS and Fox affiliate in South Bend. So I'm constantly around the team all year, travel to a couple games here and there, and around all the Notre Dame athletics, high school, Chicago and Indianapolis professional sports. So get a little bit of everything.
Yeah, you get a lot on your plate. I did have a question about you. Did you go to Miami?
I did. Miami, Ohio, not Florida.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
The real Miami. The real Miami.
The real Miami.
Yeah. I heard someone calling them. I heard someone call them the other day the Miami Oxfords. I thought that was kind of cute.
That's a new one. There's a lot of different names for it. J. Crew U is one of them.
J. Crew U.
But yeah. Miami was established in 1809 before Florida was even a state. So they are the real Miami. They're along the Miami River in Oxford, Ohio.
Were they one of the, because they're the Red Hawks, were they the Redskins at one point and they got renamed?
Yeah, they switched in the late 90s.
That tracks. Okay. Anyway, so we have you on because you are there in South Bend. There's a small Catholic college dedicated to Our Lady in South Bend. You may have heard of them, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and they were left out of the college football playoffs. What's kind of the mood around the facility? What's the mood around town, I guess? Well, because the rankings came out yesterday, so they've had about 24 hours to chew on it. So what's kind of the deal right now?
There's a lot of shock, frustration, I guess you can call it disbelief, because from the Notre Dame perspective and hearing what athletic director Pete Bavacqua and kind of the tone of Marcus Freeman going into the playoff selection was, they thought they were in. They didn't really understand when Alabama beat Auburn by 7 on the road and Notre Dame beat Stanford by, what was it, 29?
Yeah, why 49-20, I think was the final.
So Alabama jumping them in the rankings heading into this past Tuesday when the before conference championships, they didn't really understand that perspective, why Alabama would all of a sudden make the jump against a team with a losing record. And then obviously going into championship weekend, it came down to obviously Alabama having a game. BYU had a game. They were just behind Notre Dame. And of course, behind BYU was Miami. So it's strange that Notre Dame was the only idle team who fell in the rankings from Tuesday to Sunday. Mm-hmm. BYU had the conference championship. They fall out. They got beat 34-7.
Yeah.
Alabama gets beat 28-7, and they don't get affected by that. And there's precedent in the past. You look at SMU last year; they lose in the ACC championship. They drop 3 spots, but they're still in the field.
Right.
Even when you go back to the 4-team format 2 years ago, Florida State, ACC champion, undefeated, and Alabama gets in over them. So that's kind of the perplexing aspect and the source of a lot of confusion is why is Alabama, who lost in the ACC championship, went 1-1 in their final 2 games of the regular season, why did they not get affected by, or I should say 1-1, meaning beat Auburn in the final game of the regular season, losing the SEC championship, and why do they get to stay put, yet BYU gets punished for losing. I would say 3 scores constitutes a blowout, and both were 3-score games. And
it's not like Alabama went out and just trounced Auburn at Jordan Hare. I think Alabama had 2 really kind of bad weeks in a row. Now, granted, yes, they beat Auburn, which winning matters, but in a somewhat of a way, like style points still matter a little bit too. And when you look bad against your rival, but still win, we'll give you credit for winning. But then you go into the SEC title game against a very good Georgia team and don't even look like you belong on the same field, then it kind of, yes, the committee's not going to punish you too much for getting that extra, for earning the right to play that extra game. But when you go out and don't even look like you belong, then I think the conversation can be had of like, okay, is this really one of the most, is this one of the best 12 teams? One of the most deserving? And that's really the criteria is, are we going for best or are we going for most deserving? Because if we're going for best, then Notre Dame absolutely should be in. I think they were like the 5th highest betting odds before they got left out to win the national title. I mean, they'd won 10 in a row. Like, yes, your first 2 games you lost, but you lost by a combined 4 points to 2 teams that are in the playoffs. And you should have won the game against A&M. I still maintain they got screwed, and they should have won. But
yeah, when you look at Alabama, the committee chair Hunter Yurachek said yesterday he encouraged everybody on the committee to go back and watch the Notre Dame Miami game. And yeah, when one of the main sticking points of criteria for making the field is head to head, I described kind of the process as a whole as illogical. When you look at Miami, yeah, head-to-head matters. They got the head-to-head over Miami. That is logical. The illogical part is, like I mentioned, Alabama getting in when you have -3 rushing yards against Georgia in the SEC championship. You lose to a 5-7 Florida State in week 1. There's just the whole process didn't really make a lot of sense. But again, credit to Alabama because they do have the best win of anybody who was kind of on the bubble. They went to Sanford Stadium and beat Georgia in Athens.
Between the shrubs.
That is undoubtedly the best win of any bubble team. But then again, they probably also have the worst loss with Florida State. And it's still, that's kind of like the perplexing aspect of this all is how does BYU get punished for losing in the Big 12 championship to the number 4 team, but Alabama doesn't when they lose to the number 3. It wasn't even close.
Right.
They got shut out through the first 3 quarters. And they have -3 rushing yards. That's the perplexing part because when you looked at it, you thought, okay, Alabama wins. Obviously, they have an automatic bid into the CFP.
And they would have a great chance of being in the top 4 because if they beat Georgia twice, basically on the road twice too, because the first game was in Athens and then the SEC title game is obviously in Atlanta, which is 2.5 hours from Athens. Like that's a home game for Georgia. So if Alabama were to go out there and beat them twice, I think they would have had a great shot at I don't know, swapping with Texas Tech for number 4.
Sure.
Or the top 4 would probably be some iteration, some order of Indiana, Ohio State, Texas Tech, and Alabama. Even if Alabama had the 2 losses against Oklahoma and Florida State, like if you beat Georgia twice on the road, like that's worth something. But they didn't even look like they belonged at all. And I think that was the thing with Texas and everybody down here in the DFW area was like, clamoring for Texas, and Sarkisian's out there going, "Oh, we deserve it." Like, you lost to Florida. Florida sucks. I understand you beat Oklahoma and you beat
argument with Florida State,
right,
and Alabama. They're not great losses, and when you compare losses versus wins, okay, do you take great wins with higher stock or losses with higher stock? And the committee seemed to choose the wins over the losses.
And I thought Notre Dame obviously losing to Miami and then losing to A&M is much better than Miami losing to SMU and Louisville. Like, Louisville's decent. SMU,
especially more recent losses versus
because Notre Dame hadn't lost since September, right?
Yeah, since the 1 point loss, 41-40 to Texas A&M at home.
Yeah, so you lose by 1 point at home to what's A&M, 7?
They are 7. Yeah.
That's gonna be an interesting one.
One of the things I was going to mention,
Miami and A&M.
We can talk about all the wins and losses, but I think the biggest talking point that I can see is the process. You've got a committee with over a dozen people in a room, and a week ago
they're down at the Gaylord in Grapevine, by the way.
Yeah,
or they were
exactly. We were told that I had watched an interview where no one had watched the Notre Dame Miami game. That was not a factor. That Miami was not in the picture. That was 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Everything was really focused on everybody but Miami. It was, Alabama. It was Notre Dame. It was BYU. People like that. So my thinking is, why all of a sudden did ESPN here in the last couple of days start showing on ESPN News, ESPNU, ESPN2 replays of the Miami Notre Dame game, on TV? What's the purpose of that? It's obviously there's a process here that is flawed, that if Miami was so much better than Notre Dame, why weren't they better than Notre Dame last week, the week before? Why suddenly neither team played and suddenly there's this change? What happened? One of the things late, I don't know if you stayed up late enough the other night, but I even thought to myself at midnight when Duke intercepted that ball in the end zone against Virginia, I said to myself right then, Notre Dame's in trouble. Because there,
same thing.
They're not, Duke had 5 losses. All they were a spoiler. If Virginia wins, they're in, and so is Notre Dame, in my opinion.
I don't necessarily agree with that, because there was always going to be the one spot for the ACC champion, or in the case of Duke, it was going to be the next highest rated conference champion. So that's spot.
That's exactly what I'm leading up to.
Yeah,
well, that's what I had said.
Was always going to be filled no matter what. So that's why there were only 2 true at-large spots, and they went to Alabama and Miami.
Yeah,
that's what I said Thursday. That's what I said to you guys Thursday after the rankings had come out earlier in the week. I had said, like, worst case scenario is BYU beats Texas, some combination of BYU beating Texas Tech and Duke beating Virginia. Because at that point, like, as long as Alabama looked somewhat competitive, and they didn't, which I think probably should have dropped Alabama. Mark Ingram was on Fox saying that Alabama should be out. Mark Ingram, of all people, the biggest homer for Alabama there is, he'll get on Fox on Big Noon Kickoff and say, I don't give a piss about nothing but the Tide. And Mark Ingram's out there going, I don't think Alabama should be in. So, like, what are we doing? But I had said it, and I hate to say I told you so. No, I enjoy saying that. I said the committee is setting up to leave Notre Dame out. Like the title of our show last week was, is Notre Dame about to get left out?
Yep.
So did I call it, or did I call it?
Well, darn well that the ACC people said, hey, we have to have at least one team in the tournament. And like Bennett, you mentioned, if it comes down to Virginia or Miami, then you might go with Virginia since they won the tournament, the conference championship. Miami's still out. Does that mean Notre Dame's in? I don't know. But when Duke won, you immediately defer to Miami. And that's, when that happened, I said, Notre Dame's out. The only thing, it's now between Notre Dame and Alabama. It's not between Notre Dame and Miami because Miami is in. It's now the decision between Alabama and Notre Dame. One of them's in, one of them is out.
Yeah, and I think all along it's been more Alabama than Miami because everybody knew all along Miami has the head-to-head. So if it comes down to it, head-to-head's a major factor in the committee's decision. And obviously Miami has that. Doesn't matter when in the season it was. Miami always had that. But when you look at Alabama, you have their resumes and their criteria, their strength of record, their strength of schedule, their FPI. The only thing, Notre Dame had a better FPI, but strength of record, strength of schedule very much leaned toward Alabama. So it's understandable why Notre Dame would be left out. And I think kind of everybody, when everything aligned on conference championship Saturday, when you say, okay, Notre Dame really needs Texas Tech and Georgia to win because those are losses, it could move Notre Dame up. So everything was set up the way Notre Dame expected to, where they could make the field. And when I think it was just kind of a tease by the committee that Notre Dame was just kind of getting strung along the entire way of, okay, you're in the field, you're on the field. Surprised you're not in the field anymore because head-to-head was going to be a factor. And ultimately the committee put more on Alabama's strength of record, strength of schedule, and playing in a conference championship and didn't punish them for losing by 3 scores.
So if this were if the whole committee selection thing were not a made for TV event where they were out there ranking them every week and they just had it where it was like March Madness, where it's like, this is the one sneak peek that you're going to get into the committee thought process is the final product. I mean, does that make it that much? Does it make it a little bit more easy to stomach if you're Notre Dame, or if the final ranking was the only ranking you got the entire time, would it be like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. Alabama played in their conference title game. Miami beat us. Yeah, it sucks, but I mean, that's the way it is. Whereas the last, 2 months or so, they had set it up where, oh, no, Notre Dame is ahead of Miami. And now they pull the rug out from under you at the 23rd hour.
I think 100%. And athletic director Pete Bavacqua came out and told Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports yesterday, any rankings before the final rankings are a farce and a waste of time. That was a direct quote from that.
And he's
article.
right.
Yeah,
he's 1,000% right.
It's a, like I said before, it was a total tease by the committee to have Notre Dame think they're in the entire time. And yeah, when you look at the ultimate body of work, should they have gotten in compared to those other teams? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
It really depends on what side of the argument you go for in terms of the criteria of their resumes. And
but he means
quite frankly, Alabama's is better.
Even Coach Saban had called out the playoff committee chair on ESPN the other day, and he goes, did he actually even give a single good answer or a single clarifying answer that entire time? It was just talking in circles and coach non-answers. And I mean, the Notre Dame AD is 1,000% right. Every committee ranking before yesterday morning meant really nothing, because I thought the world would be that like Ohio State would drop to 3 if they lost, or the loser of the Big Ten would drop to 3, and then the winner of the SEC, assuming it was Georgia, would go to number 2. And then, hey, look, nope, Ohio State's 2. And then you got to play the winner of Miami and A&M. So it's like, okay. But yeah, the whole made for TV event, Jerry Jones is taking very copious notes on how to keep people engaged. And and talking about this because he's like, oh, something that doesn't actually matter in their intermediate until it finally gets to the end of it. Oh, sign me up. And conspiracy, Jerry, Arkansas guy, the CFP committee chair, Arkansas AD. I don't know where I'm going with that, but it's just connecting two things.
I've heard a lot of different conspiracy theories of, there's somebody from Alabama's national championship in 1973 that's on the committee, and so therefore it's that's all just.
Well, one thing this has done has the people that watch basketball this winter coming up, it's going to really shoot the validity or the confidence out of the water for people like Jay Billis and Vital and these guys that are going to sit there and tell you who the top 5 teams are and who should be in the tournament and who shouldn't be in the tournament as we get closer to March Madness, because all those people are no different than you or I. They're sitting here watching stuff, using the eye test, using games that have been previously played here back in November. How about these basketball games that have taken place at Thanksgiving? There have been a lot of big name schools playing each other. Are those games going to be brought up in March for discussion by the quote committee to see, who's the number 1 seed, who's the 2 seed? It's not going to matter who's in and who's out because those teams aren't who we're talking about. So
I think seeding doesn't even necessarily matter. People just want to make the tournament and they got to play who they play. Yeah, They just want in. And I think basketball and football in this regard are completely separate entities because there's more, obviously there's more automatic qualifiers, but also there are more advanced metrics that decide who gets in and who doesn't, whereas the committee, it's okay, how much do they really take into consider the eye test, even though they say it's strength of record, strength of schedule, head to head, things like that. There's so many more subjective factors when it comes to football, whereas basketball, it's a little more concrete. You also have more games, so you could play more of these teams, and that's been a lot of the focus, especially the scheduling now when it comes to basketball, is I think you want to play teams that are going to be in March, because if you can sneak out a win, they're going to help you no matter what. So I think that's why you're seeing a lot of these multi-team events where you have some of the nation's best teams and you're seeing better non-conference schedules. I mean, heck, Duke and Michigan are playing in Washington, D.C. in February. Why? Because they can. They have the fans, the draw, and they're 2 of the top 5 teams in the country right now, and they want to play each other because
Duke just went to East Lansing.
Prepare. Yeah, exactly. It helps them prepare for ultimately where they want to be. And I think when it comes to basketball, it's a little more concrete in the decision process, whereas football, everything is a little bit more subjective and you can have more influence. And that's why you see all these coaches beforehand campaigning to be like, this is why we should be in the 12-team field. It's not a 64. And I think they're kind of separate entities in that regard.
Well, here's a hot take then.
Okay.
This year would have been the perfect year to only have 4 teams. Because I think there's a very clear dividing line between 4 and 5.
But also,
although Oregon only lost once, though Oregon maybe A&M.
There's always going to be those 2 or 3 programs who are going to feel like they got snubbed. It doesn't matter if you have 4 teams, 12, 16, God forbid 32. I mean, it's always going to happen where somebody feels like they're going to be left out. And that's not going to change, even if, it certainly didn't change with Ford. Even look at 2 years ago, right before they did it, to 12 teams. Florida State, undefeated, ACC champion, they don't get in. That was kind of, I know people were saying this is going to be the most, remembered and controversial CFP rankings. I disagree. Look at 2 years ago.
That's good.
And look where Florida State was then versus where they are now. They go from undefeated ACC champion, don't make the playoff. You get killed by 60 in your bowl game against Georgia. That was 63-3 because of opt-outs, injuries, and then Florida State was a shell of itself from what it was that year. And they go 1-11 and then 5-7. It's
hey, let me move to another topic associated with scheduling. Let's talk about the future. Next year, the year after. A lot of these teams have their schedules clear out 5, 6, 7 years. Notre Dame has some games already scheduled for 2030.
Well, they've got the home and home against Alabama in 27, 28.
Alabama, Michigan.
You go in and change your schedule. Look at Notre Dame's schedule next year.
Yeah, they already did. They already did change it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
They dropped Florida State, and they picked up. Right. I know Rice is on that schedule. They've got a week 1 neutral site at Lambeau against Wisconsin. There's definitely efforts to make people's schedule better, and I think Notre Dame understands that more than some other teams. Yeah, here you go. Wisconsin, Rice, Michigan State's got a home and home. They're going to keep playing Purdue, and then a lot of those SEC teams, and things are going to continue with Clemson here in the near future as well.
I was saying that they have to go undefeated next year, right? If they don't go undefeated, like Marcus has got some explaining to do, because Miami might jump up on them. I don't know, depending on who they get as a QB after Carson Beck leaves. But man, that schedule's easy.
Well,
you can look at that every single year, and people thought, it was going to be ridiculous to think Notre Dame would go undefeated this year. Everybody wants to go undefeated, but it's extremely hard to do. Like Indiana, of all places, is the only team to go undefeated this year to this point.
We're in an upside down. Somebody quoted the other day, we're in an upside down universe that IU and Duke won championships in December, not March.
Right, exactly.
Thought that was interesting. So Notre Dame's learned a tough lesson. If they lose 1, they're in someplace. If they lose 2, they're at the mercy of the committee.
Yeah, and they've known that all along, and I think you could sense that urgency as soon as they lost to Texas A&M. It's beginning of the year, I would say the press conferences with players and Marcus Freeman were very short, but also frank in the fact of what they needed to do. They knew all along, and it was mentioned yesterday too, they played 10 straight elimination games, and they won all of them.
Convincingly.
So everybody knows what the criteria is to make the playoff, and if you have 3 losses, probably not going to do the job. But 2 is going to put you on the fringe, and I think they knew that all along.
Let's just say Notre Dame joined a conference. If they were in the ACC, would they be in? If they were in the Mountain West, Scott, would they be in? If they were in the Big 12, would they be in? I mean,
I don't think
that's subjective. I know.
Yeah, and I don't even think it would really make a difference regardless.
But the other thing is the ACC a liability right now because they have a partnership where they play a few of the teams, 2 or 3?
Yeah, they're required to play 16 over 4 years.
See, next year they've got North Carolina, Miami, Boston College, SMU, and Syracuse.
Yeah,
some years they'll play 3 ACC, sometimes they'll play 5.
And it's anybody's guess whether that the teams that they pick for that particular year, they might be a 3-9 team, or they might be a 9-3 team. You just don't know.
Right. You look at Louisville. All things were, or even NC State. They had a pretty good year last year, and
do those teams?
And now look at Tyler Shuck. He's out there winning NFL games.
Exactly.
Do those teams have a choice? Can they say no? We don't want to play Notre Dame. I mean,
that's the thing is that everybody.
Why would you
everybody
not?
wants to play one.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
TV revenue.
Yeah, think about Pitt this year. That was the greatest draw for Pitt. They go, okay, we're playing Notre Dame. We're ranked. They're ranked. We're going to retire Aaron Donald's jersey. We're going to make the biggest hoopla of it all. And that's ultimately how everybody feels when they play Notre Dame. Is we're playing Notre Dame because
Except
they
Pat
draw the
Narduzzi
fans
for some reason.
One of the things I think Notre Dame has to eliminate is they've got to eliminate those money games, the Marshalls, the Northern Illinois, the Ball States. I just don't think that helps them, because, and this, I think them getting snubbed because of strength of schedule as a topic, verifies that they don't need to play, unfortunately, Miami of Ohio.
Hey,
they need to play.
Hey, watch
they need
it.
to play Wisconsin at Lambeau. Somebody like that.
I mean,
Because that's one of those
they
games
definitely
you got to win by 40 to.
Yeah, but you got to get those tune-up games too, where you
Exactly,
get
yes.
where you get your second team guys some
Well, and then
reps in a real game.
And
who did
also too,
Alabama
if
play in
you
week
have
10?
if you have a brutal schedule as well, there's no chance for growth. There's no chance to figure some stuff out. They're always going to have at least one or two of those games. I mean, unfortunately, Purdue is kind of one of those now too, where
It has become that.
yeah, you got to play them because.
Hey, watch out! Barry Odom flipped a 4-star safety from Ole Miss and got him up there. So
yeah, it's
watch
stuff
out.
like that. Where
No fly zone coming.
They need to play those games, because if you're playing a top 25 team every week, you're going to get exhausted. That level of football is exhausting. It takes a toll on the players. It takes a toll on the coaches. You need some weeks, and is Notre Dame going to take a week off or relax? No, they're not going to, but there's different things that you can try and figure out in those games with your team that are beneficial when you do play those bigger ranked teams.
All right, let me ask you another question. Notre Dame's contract with NBC, I think, is up in 2 or 3 years. That's a huge negotiating tool, because, as we've described, Notre Dame's not changing. They're not going to a conference, and they want to keep their own TV contract. The biggest competitor right now for NBC is ESPN, who we've talked about all week has been, the choreographer for all of these games that we've been talking about, and all these weekly products, the telecast about who's the top teams. Did ESPN have anything to do with Notre Dame, getting snubbed? And was it part of a marketing tool that Notre Dame will possibly negotiate with ESPN 2 or 3 or 4 years from now?
No, because you don't negotiate with terrorists.
Well, I'm just saying.
I would say no, 100%, because ESPN wants Notre Dame. They want the draw. They want the eyes. They want the viewership. They want the fandom that comes along with Notre Dame, because it's unlike so many other schools.
But they also want the SEC, and they want the Big 12.
Sure, but I didn't really understand this until probably 2 years ago. I'm now in my fourth. This is my fourth football season. It took me about 2 years to realize, because I was always on the Notre Dame detractors. I grew up a Michigan fan. My first time in South Bend was for Michigan Notre Dame in 2012. So I don't want to say drank the Kool-Aid, but I never truly understood the draw of Notre Dame. And then I don't know what all of a sudden clicked, but I understand where they're coming from now. They're going to maintain their independence. There's no reason not to. They have their own money. They have their partnership with NBC, and I think they're quite happy with it. And I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon, regardless if they join a conference or not. And I still don't think they're going to join a conference. It's Notre Dame is a draw. They know that. Everybody else knows that. I don't think ESPN would have any reservation about
NBC has the Big Ten contract. And I think you and I mentioned it at the golf course one day, that for television, what's your biggest draw right now is that 2:30 or 3:30 NBC Notre Dame game on a Saturday afternoon, and they follow it up with a night game in the Big Ten.
Exactly. Especially because when you look at, this is getting into a lot of inside baseball when it comes to television, but when you look at NBC, their sports entities are growing. They obviously have the Olympics. They have the NBA now. They have the Big Ten. They're putting more and more basketball games on NBC. So Notre Dame had that.
Rock back.
Yeah, Notre Dame had that before the Big Ten. So it's just kind of an additive for NBC, and it raises the value of the company, and therefore, in turn, can also help raise the value of Notre Dame when it already has, and everybody knows that is the channel for Notre Dame.
All right, now Notre Dame's not going to now that they're not in the playoffs. Now they've also said we're staying home. We're finished. We're already into our off-season program. We are recruiting. We don't have time to play in a bowl game. What's the future of the bowl games? I think things are changing.
So I'll answer that in two parts. First, I'll start with Notre Dame opting out. It's understandable why they would, and Pete Bavacqua said today on the Dan Patrick Show, it was a player-led decision. You know, the opt-outs that were going to happen, the injuries that are kind of nagging them all year long, and obviously you got Jeremiah Love injured in the Stanford game,
or even potential for guys that aren't injured to get injured. I always look back to
that's always a factor for sure. And when you look at all those things,
and those games don't mean anything except for extra money.
It was a CFP or bust type of year, and they thought they should have been in the CFP. And everybody's saying, "Oh, they're pouting, they're a bunch of crybabies, whatever."
Wouldn't you be kind of upset too?
Decision. Yeah, exactly. It's a player-led decision, and I think that shows. And that could always be a talking point. People could call that, "Oh, you're just saying it's a player-led decision." Knowing Marcus Freeman, knowing this program, I would not have been surprised. And I'm not surprised that they went to the captains and said, "Do you want to play this game?" And I think it's more power to them for not playing. Does that devalue bowl games as a whole? As soon as the CFP came out, it was going to happen. As soon as it's expanded to 12 teams and you take out some of those marquee matchups and the New Year's Day 6 games are gone, that devalues pretty much everything. And it's not like Notre Dame's alone in opting out of bowl games. There's 8 or 9 different schools that said, "Yeah, we're not playing." Even a 5-7 team said, "Yeah, we're not going to play in a bowl game."
I read this morning, Auburn said no. They came to Auburn and they said no. Like K-State,
UCF is 5-7. They said no, we're not going to play in a game. And
I did see a news flash earlier. Purdue announced that they would not accept a bowl bid.
It makes perfect sense why some of these teams would, and in their statement yesterday that I feel like kind of broke the internet a little bit. They said, "We look forward to bringing a 12th national title to South Bend in 2026. That's ultimately how some schools feel. They want to start shifting to next year. That they have 24 of their 27 commits in the 2026 class enrolling early in January. It's recruiting. It's the transfer portal, which opens up in, I believe, 25 days on January 2nd. They want to start figuring out, okay, who's in the portal, who could be in the portal, start scouting that and focusing on next year. And for, a bowl game that, the only non-CFP bowl game you want to go to now is the Pop-Tart Bowl, but it could just but when you look at it, what makes that bowl game great? It's a gimmick. It's a bit. Mm-hmm. It's a great. It does great on social media, but
I had
that draw?
Which one
is that below Notre Dame though?
The Citrus Bowl.
2 years ago, they're
in Orlando.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago they're playing in the Sun Bowl in El Paso, Texas. Mm. That's not a bowl game is not beneath them, but I think it's because of the manner in which they were left out, the fatigue that came with thinking that they were in, and when you look at the future of a lot of these guys on the roster right now, there's 6, maybe 7 NFL draft picks. They were going to have more opt-outs for seniors who were going to try and focus on the draft. The injuries, I mean, look at the offensive line. You got Kingston Viliamu-Asa out, and Tay Johnson got hurt. Jeremiah Love got hurt. It makes perfect sense, and especially when you have a redshirt freshman quarterback that you want to protect at all costs because he's your future. Sure, you could throw Kenny Minchie out there and they'd probably be okay, but throwing Notre Dame into a bowl game where you would have all the opt-outs and guys trying to prevent injury, they didn't want to put a product on the field that's a shell of itself from what it was this year and be an inaccurate representation of what this team has been all year.
So I guess just kind of putting a bow on this year, they're not going to play in a bowl. Like the group of juniors and seniors that people have come to know and love, they're going to be off to the next thing. I know Marcus inked a very, very good recruiting class. How many of those guys do you think have an actual chance of seeing decent playing time as true freshmen, if any? Because I mean, there's some unicorns out there like a Jeremiah Smith, like a Bryce Underwood that can play right away, but it's still tough in major college football. And then who goes? Who do you think might stay to try to make their draft stock better for next year and all that? Like, what's the general feel for the roster for next year, the day after that this season ended?
Sure, I think there's a lot of promise for this freshman class. Mm-hmm. The athletes that are in it, I mean, especially in the secondary, oh my goodness, they signed, look at Aiden Pouncey or Joey O'Brien, who's a 5-star safety. Those are guys who very well could make an impact, and both general manager Mike Martin and Marcus Freeman said on signing day, college football is shifting to more of a dime package where you're having 5 defensive backs out there and 2 linebackers. So that's why they went with more defensive backs in this recruiting cycle than linebackers. You also have a great young linebacking core, so those spots are filled. But you're going to need kind of more athletes on the field to defend a lot of teams who are turning to speed and get gadget kind of guys on offense. So you need athletes who can go and cover those kind of guys. And so I think there's definitely a lot of promise with this upcoming freshman class. And when it comes to guys staying for the draft versus leaving this year, I think it's pretty well cut and dry who's gone. I think
like Jeremiah Love's a junior, but he's gone. There's
gone.
No chance. He'll be the first running back taken.
Yeah, and I think the second's going to be Jadarian Price. I don't think his stock can get any higher. And I think if you look at a lot of draft rankings, Mel Kiper has Love and Price 1 and 2, which you could argue, they're the best running back tandem, and Jeremiah or Jadarian Price would be pretty easy starter at any other program in the country. And even, Penn State's got 2 great running backs and Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, and they're going to be right up there kind of alongside Price and Love. So it's guys like that who they can't improve their stock anymore. So let's go. I think, Billy Shroud.
I was going to ask, here in these next few days, these player coach meetings or exit meetings, be interesting to see some of these guys that thought they'd made their mind up. Maybe now, can you dangle the idea saying, hey, if you come back, this'll, we're one step away. It's almost like the IU situation, year 1 and year 2. Can we be that much better if you stay with the NIL now today, especially some of your linemen? Can you talk some of these linemen into staying another year? Can you talk a tight end into staying another year? If we give you a couple more dollars, an extra day at, free Big Mac or something, per week, whatever.
Maybe a pizza over at Corby's.
Exactly. But you know what I'm talking about. Can you give them a package that's enticing enough to make them think about maybe they stay another year, they get that 5th year and they start working on their graduate program at Notre Dame, that you
or even getting a junior to go back for his senior year.
Or
I think it's like kind of how I was saying. I think it's pretty cut and dry who's staying and who's leaving. And I think they have those conversations as soon as the season ends. They want to know so that when it comes to playoff preparation and things like that, they already know who's leaving and who's coming back. I think kind of the only –
because if you're not playing for a championship, then those guys are opting out of a bowl. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, exactly. And I was starting to say Billy Shrouth is kind of a great example of, he was injured for a good chunk of the year. Had they made the playoff, he probably would have come back. he's kind of one of those candidates where it's okay. Is he going to transfer? Does Notre Dame? I mean, this happens too sometimes where it's Notre Dame feels like they have a younger guy who's they can get more value out of. So look at Pat Coogan, for example. Last year, he says instead of grad year here, I'm going to go elsewhere. It could be. It could be. Yeah, and obviously Notre Dame had the pieces behind with Ashton Craig, who was the original center before Pat Coogan came in. We're going to have him in this spot. I'm curious to see what will happen with a guy like Sullivan Absher. He filled in for Billy Shrouth, and they have Gerby Lambert along the left side. Tackle spots are pretty well set, and they have two guys who were freshmen this year, Will Black, and I'm blanking on the second guy at the moment, but they're gigantic, very talented, high 4-star, 5-star guys when they came in, and they have the pieces to where it's okay. Do you say, hey, Billy, sorry, we're going to go in a different direction? Mm-hmm. So I think it's less of a matter of, and that's just, for example, on the offensive line, but there could be other positions. Take Jordan Vitello last year, for example. He could have tried to go to the draft. He could have transferred, stayed, and now he's going to hopefully be in a better position to go to the draft. So I think they have a good idea of where their roster is going to be, where they have holes that they might need to fill in the transfer portal. But even then, there aren't too many gaps that you really need to fill with this roster. The staff has done an unbelievable job recruiting and
they're stockpiling depth at this point. With these young guys coming in, they're stockpiling depth, and that's a trick. Can you keep them happy?
Right, and that's the thing. The NIL world is keeping your depth around, because you keep your sophomores that you can say, hey, like, we'll try to get you on the field a little bit here this year, but like this dude in front of you is going to be first round, second round pick in the NFL. Like, wait your turn. It will be worth it. And sometimes that can fall on deaf ears. They're like, no, I want to go play. So they transfer. So keeping your depth around is huge.
That's what Notre Dame has done a really good job of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Making sure guys don't transfer who they want to keep. And I think a great example, look at Aeneas Williams. He showed in these last couple of games in the third and fourth quarter when they're up big. They showed he's still the explosive back that we saw last year in the college football playoff run. He's going to be in line for definitely more volume next year because he knows he has 2 NFL draft picks right in front of him, 2 top 3-round picks. And so that's a great example. And then take the wide receiver room. Look at 2-3 years ago, that was the huge complaint is, oh my God, nobody can catch the ball. Mm-hmm. They have built up that room. Mike Brown's done an unbelievable job in recruiting and creating depth. And I think maybe they'll take 1, maybe 2 wide receivers in the portal, but you have Jaden Greathouse, you have Jordan Faison. They're really high on Elijah Burris and Jerome Bettis Jr. So, those are all kind of smaller guys. So maybe they go and try and get another Malachi Fields just to have a deep ball contested specialist kind of guy. But that recruiting room and the guys who are already in the room are strong enough already to where they don't necessarily need to add or subtract or say, you're not going to see the field. We think you should transfer.
All right. Well, any other save rounds alibis for Bennett before we let him get on with his day and go do his actual job?
No, I'm just happy to say hello. Haven't seen Bennett for a couple of days. So, hey, you're always welcome to stop by Corby's on Thursday night. So, depending on your schedule.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Next couple of weeks, they're going to get a little hectic.
You'll get there a few minutes before 8. You can eat some leftover pizza with us.
I'll see what I can do. It's going to be a busy couple of weeks.
All right, thanks.
All right. That is Bennett Wise. Thanks for joining us here on the whatever this is on Coach's Corner, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks.
All right, thanks, guys.
See ya. All right, so good stuff from Bennett. I guess we can stay on here. We've got some people watching. If you're watching on YouTube, this is the only place I put it on. I didn't put it on broadcastsport.net. leave some commentary in the chats. We'll read the chat. It away from specifically Notre Dame because like I watch Notre Dame a decent amount. They're not my team. I'm not paid to watch them like Bennett is. And I mean, you live up there, but I mean, that's not your
their wins and losses does not affect my sleep habits.
Right. So I guess just college football playoffs as a whole, what are we thinking as far as the matchups are out? Or is there any big
I think your top four right now, if they're not the top four New Year's Day, coming out of New Year's Day, I think there's an upset then, because I think those four will definitely be the favorites. We can talk about Mississippi or Oklahoma or pick a team. Oregon, they're all going to have to go, they're going to have to beat a pretty good team, whether it's, let's face it, IU proved that they're the real deal. A lot of people doubted them. There's always, like we said on our show the other day, they're one of those but teams, like the Bears. The Bears are winning, but IU's winning, but you're just waiting for something to happen. You're going, yep, there's IU. Well, it hadn't happened yet.
I mean, I think they proved a lot. I will say the one caveat, I was impressed by the defenses. If you like defensive slobber knockers with some good offense sprinkled in, then the Big Ten championship was your game.
I thought it was a good game.
It was, and I think a lot of people got out of that these are the best two football teams in college football.
Well, you saw teams that were high-scoring teams for 12 games, and suddenly they're playing in a one touchdown game.
Right, because I think the over/under was like 46, and they halved it.
Yeah, take the under, right?
Yeah. IU got a tough draw. They're gonna have to play the winner of Oklahoma, Alabama, and the Rose Bowl, and we can talk about this maybe more on Thursday when we read.
I agree.
And John, but I guess my whole thing with like Tulane and JMU, like the way the system is set up, then that's kind of they were going to be in, because that's just how it works. If they go to 16 teams next year, or even 14, where maybe only the 1 and 2 seeds get buys, I don't think JMU and Tulane would have made it under a different circumstance, but that's just the system that we're in right now.
I really think we're going to see some big changes in the tournament setup, because the next 3 weeks with the bowl season, I think you're going to see some really bad football.
Probably.
And a lot of football that no one watches. You're going to see stadiums that are at best half full, and you're going to see sponsors that are going to be, behind the scenes going, okay, we can't do this very many times, because
except for the Pop-Tart Bowl, that one will be well watched.
Who did they end up? Who replaced Notre Dame? It's BYU, and who else? Who is BYU going to play?
Georgia Tech.
Okay.
Which I thought Georgia Tech had a good chance of making the playoffs if they would have been able to beat Georgia.
Sure.
In the last game of the year.
I mean, and if you think about it, the NIT, if you wanted to dream up an NIT of the teams that got snubbed, like the next 8.
Well, I think the Pop-Tart Bowl's Georgia Tech, BYU. I think the Cheez-It Bowl maybe is Michigan and Texas.
Okay.
Penn State's playing somebody in the Pinstripe Bowl. There's going to be some good games with some good teams here and there, but it's basically just a spring game. It's an early spring game for next year, because like Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, obviously Drew Aller for Penn State they're not going to play. Why would you? Dennis Sutton's not going to play.
Here's something I'm going to bring up for Thursday, and I don't think we're not going to be able to solve it, but I really think the day of the conference championship game that we saw this past weekend in your Power 4, Power 5 conferences has no use. The conferences have gotten so big that all you're doing is playing for placement. It's like watching the Big Ten championship game in basketball that starts at 3:00 on a Sunday, and the selection shows 3 hours later. I mean, the players watch the game from the locker room because all you're doing is playing for placement. You're not playing for in or out like you do some of the smaller conferences that you see in basketball.
And the Big Ten championship this year, really, I mean, it didn't mean a whole lot. Like, I think Indiana honestly got the tougher draw out of it, but you knew both teams were in. You knew both teams were going to get a bye. Now, obviously, when the game starts, they're going to play, and they're going to play to win. But leading up to it, I'm sure both coaches, and Ohio State had a lot of distractions. We can talk about that Thursday too. But going into it, like, I'm sure Cignetti and Ryan Day both were like, yeah, we want to win, but we're not going to completely empty the magazine to do it either.
You remember Heck and I had a discussion. I said something about, I'm not going to show you everything because I figure we may play again.
And I don't think they did.
Heck said he's emptying the barrel.
A lot of those personnel packages that Ohio State ran where they put 4 tight ends on the field and took the top 2 wide receivers in the country off the field. I think I hated it because why in the heck would you take Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate off the field? But I understand kind of why they did it. It's to save the snaps on those guys. Now, Jeremiah Smith, I think the offense ran 56 plays. Jeremiah Smith was out there for 52 of them. Now, I think Carnell Tate's still kind of hurt.
So they ran the same play they were going to run. They just ran it out of a different formation. All that does is force the opposing teams to draw a different play up on the scout board.
Yeah. So,
but I really think that in the next, you can name 3 years, 5 years, we're going to see 2 different tournaments. You're going to see a Power 5 tournament where they literally take the best 12. No, don't worry about conference tournaments. Then you're going to have another tournament that's going to be the group of 5. And they're going to play. They're going to use these other bowl games. They're going to use those other bowl games, and it's going to save those other bowl games.
I think it'd be good. It'd be good TV too. And
you're going to have call it whatever you want to call it. And you're going to have the James Madisons and the Appalachian States, and a Toledo or Ball State or whoever it might be, where they're going to be in their own tournament.
Yep.
And it'll be in some of those other bowls that we watch, before Christmas.
Yeah. So there's a lot to cover. Obviously, today was more so just getting an instant reaction from the Notre Dame side since Bennett was available, and
Bennett was there. He was right in the middle of all the interviews and everything. So
So I think he said
he knows some things that he didn't tell us too. So, and
I think Marcus is having a press conference here sometime later today. So stay tuned for that. I gotta go because we got stuff to do. I still gotta go take a shower. So,
we'll see you guys Thursday night.
J Money, I saw your comment. Go Irish. They got screwed. I kind of agree. So we'll leave it at that. Thanks for those of you that tuned in here on your lunch break or so. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you Thursday.